Hey everyone! Welcome to another episode of Let's Relieve Regret. This is Shadoe, one of your co-hosts, here along with my pal.
Hi, Victoria here.
So excited to see you today, Victoria. Do you want to give us a word about how you're feeling today?
Ooh, a word check-in instead of a scale of 1 to 10. I like
We can
that.
do both.
No. I like a word check-in. I like to spice it up, Shadoe. I like
All
to
right.
have different strategies. It's good. Word. My word check-in is this is hard.
Wow, I didn't mean to throw you off. That's so funny. You're okay. How about if your word was a number from 1 to 10?
Content. How about content?
Content. Ooh, I like that.
How about content?
What's driving that?
So I'm not super excited about anything, but I'm okay,
Yeah,
content. Okay.
content.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about the word content a lot because we also have to talk a lot about the word content in the world we're living in. And it's one of these weird homonyms where it's content is so exciting, but content is just what it is. It's just described. I don't know. It's just I don't exactly know the point I'm trying to make. I just know that I find it funny when words are homonyms.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I've literally never made the connection between content and content.
Yeah. So funny.
Never.
Yeah, there was this repeated bit in the show 30 Rock where they would always cut to a fake game show where it was is it this or that, and it was always a homonym, and the person always got it wrong. So my husband and I play with that bit a lot, aging ourselves because 30 Rock is now
I've never watched it.
I think at the time it was out, it was really fresh and interesting.
Yeah.
But I think everything, a few years, maybe a full decade goes by, and it's just oh, that was a choice. Oh, that's ooh, I
It's
would,
dated or it's
yeah, because you start putting it through this lens of not just the things you've learned, but the things society has learned overall. And Ben and I watch tons of sitcoms and comedies and stuff like that. So
I feel like sitcoms aren't really a thing anymore. I feel like it's more dark comedy or let me rephrase that. I feel like it's hard to make a good sitcom now. They don't last.
Right. I think what's happening is two things. Good is so subjective.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So when you're a kid, what makes a good sitcom is different than when you're an adult. So I think those sitcoms are still being made, but we just have different standards as we get older.
Yeah. Okay.
We're
aging. We're getting old.
Though I'm not they need it, but Abbott Elementary is a really delightful sitcom.
I've heard that one and I haven't watched it yet, but a bunch of people have recommended that to me.
Yeah, it's really good. It's still the Office style kind of mockumentary.
Yeah, I love a mockumentary.
Yeah, and it's the characters are so well written and well thought out, and the connections are really strong, and when you watch a show and you feel you're in on the inside jokes. Yeah, that's what that show brings, and I really do like that.
Well,
and
that's
the rewatch
cool. That's
value
The
is
Office.
really cool.
That's cool.
Yeah,
that's cool. I like that.
So yeah, go Quinta Brunson. She's great.
All right, I'll check it out.
Yeah.
What about you? What's your word?
My word. Today I'm feeling also kind of content. Because I don't feel fizzy. Lots of times I feel fizzy and really energized because we're going to do our podcast and I get really nervous and then I have to tamp down that nervousness. But today I just feel ready to kind of go with the flow of it. And so calm, I guess calm. I feel that's a good word for today. I feel calm.
I feel like those are two good words to start out the Let's Relieve Regret podcast.
Yeah.
Good headspace to be in when you're doing some self-discovery work or personal growth work is to just so that you can tune in with yourself a bit more. So we're at a good start here.
I'm gonna write down calm content, calm content. I'm gonna do a little brainstorm on this after the podcast. Anyway, do you have a cause for applause this week?
My cause for applause, finished doing my taxes. I haven't filed them yet, but I finished doing them.
That's excellent. Do you think you'll get them in before, well, I guess Monday, because Sunday is the 30th. So
maybe.
Yeah, nice. I feel like mine are almost done. Like all the stuff is in. But then like I always use the H&R Block website to file my taxes. And I got to like the final page where it gives you your estimate. And I was like, oh, I don't like that estimate.
Yeah, that's where I'm sitting at too.
So
like,
I found some additional paperwork that I can include, but I have to do that step still to include this other paperwork. So like there's a staycation credit that you can add. We did go to a wedding in Waterloo in the fall, so I'll be able to add that on. But yeah, it's just like little things like that I'm like, okay, anything I can do to chip away at what we owe, I'm gonna add it in. But I haven't added those in yet, but I definitely have to do it this weekend. So I'm still good. I still think that's an applause because you're so
I think
close.
It's an applause. I think getting taxes done is always an applause. Even just doing the effort is an applause, because honestly, it's like nobody likes doing it. It's it's a bit overwhelming. It's daunting, whatever word you want to use. So just that I've completed the daunting work process, and now it's just the sending it in process. So I'm gonna give myself a cause for applause for that.
Yeah, definitely.
What's your cause for applause?
Okay. So I have been avoiding doing things in public, even post-pandemic, even when people were like, it's fine, go back outside, who cares? Because I don't know if I was being overly cautious or whatever else, but I just felt really strongly that I shouldn't be going out unless it was really, really worth it. I was subsequently told about a week ago from that exercise rehab I was doing that I should stop doing that and I should start going back out into the world because it's better for my mental health. So the thing I did was I went to my friend's show last week, and it was on Friday night. So, Ben and I got like super dressed up, but just not in our pajamas.
Yeah. And anything not sweatpants and pajamas is a big deal.
Totally. And we went out and we got our seats, and the show was really cool. It was like this experimental workshop type of show where there was 3 dancers, and they all did this really cool piece where there was some dance and some drama. And there was a little video to start the whole thing off. My friend was the director of it. And it was all about ADHD and like the experience of having ADHD. And like all 3 dancers have ADHD, the director has ADHD. So after they did the performance, there was also like a half-hour discussion about like, did you like it? What do you have questions about? Like all this kind of stuff. Yeah. I actually held back my feedback, which it's hard for me. But it's only because everyone's hands were up. There was so much, it was so rich and people were offering so much. So I'll definitely be like connecting with her later about some of the things that my husband and I liked about it. But it was just so cool to be back out at like a live theater show. And it was also really nice that it was like a micro one, right? It wasn't like a 3-hour Broadway play. It was like a nice little like baby step back into the real world. So that's my cause for applause.
That's a huge cause for applause. Because I have heard other people say the same thing that you have, that their doctors have told them, or they've been in some kind of program, or maybe their therapist, whatever, I've said, it's time for you to go out now, because now you're just perpetuating the paranoia, I guess, or perpetuating I don't want to say paranoia, perpetuating the fear, and you won't be able to realize what is a real healthy fear and what is actually a fear that your brain is using as an excuse to not be social.
Totally. Well, and and I was so surprised because this is like a lung doctor was like,
right. So obviously doctors are aware.
At this point, your mental health, like if you're not going out, you're not building up like that self-esteem, you're not building up this variety in your life. You definitely have to in order to like make improvements on this other thing. And also like, and again, like not that she's like go lick a pole or something, but
Yeah.
like at the same time, like, carry your hand sanitizer, carry your tissues, carry whatever you need, but like there isn't the same necessity to stay out of the public eye. And for anyone, like anyone who's immunocompromised who listens to our podcast, I'm so sorry. Like I know this must sound like very cold-hearted, but yeah, my mental health has been declining for quite some time, and I do think it's because I stopped doing any of my like hobbies and stuff. So yeah, so cause for applause. I went out and I had an enjoyable evening. On the way back, my husband and I went out for dinner, and then we got caught in the rain, which is always kind of cute.
That's fun.
Yeah, and I did. Yeah, and then when we got home, though, like poor Gertie was just like struggling because it had thundered, and she doesn't even like the thunder when we are home, let alone like we had been gone for a good 3 or 4 hours. So like she
And she
wasn't.
also probably isn't used to having you both out of the house too.
Totally. No, that was part of it for sure. And then the thunder and then like the rest of the evening, she was just inconsolable. But that's okay too, because like she needs to get some practice of being alone again.
That's good for her. I feel the same way about Olivia the cat. Like she needs some practice being alone. Yeah. And knowing that she's safe. But then there's a lot of I enjoy the cuddles when I come home.
Oh, totally. Yeah. No, it would be one thing if it was cuddles. This was very much like she was angry at us and barking at us and telling us so. Like,
yeah, she was. Yeah.
But again, that's fine. She's fine. It's a week later. I don't even think she remembers. I mean, I hope. I don't know. I don't know what goes inside a dog's brain. Anyway, with all that to say, should we just jump into our sharing today?
Yeah, let's do it.
Do you want to go first today?
Yeah.
Okay. So. Great. Do you have anything to like preamble before you start, or?
No, I think I describe it in there. I think we're going to have an interesting conversation.
Excellent.
I have something that I want to let go of in order to move forward. Here it is. It's more of a general, like broad pattern behavior within myself. I regret a behavior within myself, or a thought pattern within myself, I guess, of mistaking social connections for emotional connections, or wanting social connections to be deeper emotional connections. So what's the difference between a social connection or emotional connection? Like not all of your friends have to be the deep friends that are there for you through thick or thin. You can have, this sounds weird, like surface level friends, but friends that like, these are my friends that I do this with, or these are my friends that I do this with. But it's also important to have those deeper relationships and friendships that are those deep emotional connections, right? In the past, I've just been too trusting, or I'm searching for a deep human connection. It's a piece that I really value and I want everybody to have it. But what I regret is not being able to recognize or value that not all relationships need to be deep. They can just be social connections. They can just be light and fun, or just be in the bubble of this, in the bubble of a sport, or in the bubble of work, or in the bubble, right? They can just be in the bubble of wherever they exist. And the consequence, or what I've been missing out on, of holding on to this kind of belief that all connections need to be deep emotional connections, is I end up being hurt or disappointed in relationships when they aren't, when people aren't there for me, or when I feel like sometimes I'm reaching out to them more than they're reaching out to me, and then I end up being hurt, right? Because I thought the relationship was a deeper emotional connection. Maybe it was for me, but it's not for them, because I didn't see the relationship for what it was, which is just a joyful social connection. And if I keep holding on to that belief that all relationships have to be deep, emotional, meaningful friendships and relationships, then I'm going to continue to end up getting hurt and end up being disappointed. And I'm probably missing out on a little bit of light and joy in just having some light, joyful social relationships. So I'm acknowledging this pattern that I have in myself. And I did everything that I could in the past with this pattern that I've created, or this belief that I've created, with the tools that I had at the time. And that's okay. I've done a lot of work on myself, and I'm continuing to do a lot of work on myself and learning every day about myself and the patterns in my life and my thought and behavior patterns. And I'm moving forward from this point on.
Wow, that's a really powerful one, considering that it's not specific, but just like an overall behavior. Sorry, would
Yeah.
you like feedback today, or did you want to share and leave
Yeah.
it
I'll
there?
take feedback because I think it's a good discussion to have.
Yeah. Okay, great. So it's interesting because this one really reminds me of the regret you had about staying in relationships for too long and like letting them turn sour.
I think that's where this came from. I was thinking about that. And then my
Yeah.
brain went to peeling back another layer. Well,
Mm-hmm.
why is that happening?
Yeah.
Okay, well, it's because I have this like deep-seated belief or thought pattern that leads to the behavior pattern of staying in the relationships for too long, right? So I guess
Mm-hmm.
this one's more about that thought or belief pattern that I have around it.
It's and that's what's so interesting to me about this, is that like it's the same but different. Like it's
Yeah.
a similar regret about like friendship and putting too much expectations on other people, but at the same time it's not coming from the same place, which is so interesting to me because when you shared this regret, it was pretty recent and it's already taken this new form.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really incredible. So like I really appreciate you kind of going, like, not going back there, because that's not really what I mean, but just showing our listeners and myself that like once you give up a regret, it's not necessarily just poof, it's gone. It's like, okay, this element has been uncovered. What else is there? And that's really cool.
Yeah, like it's a journey, it's exploring, I think we've talked about this before. For some reason, we have this idea that like, oh, if I can just fix this about my emotional health or mental health, everything in life will be perfect. But the thing is that there's always another layer to peel back if you want to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the layer may be peeled back for you. You might have an inspired moment, an aha moment, a breakthrough moment. And I'd never heard this term before, emotional connection versus social connection.
Yeah, neither have I. Where'd you get that?
Yeah, I was reading an article about it just last week, and I was like, oh, that's what I've been doing.
Mm.
And then I was like, I know I'm going to write out this regret for like the podcast. But I was like, right, because human beings were hardwired for connection, right? We know this. It's survival mechanism. We needed it when we were primal. But now we need it even more for our mental health. Like we can survive without connection in many ways now, but we can't mentally and emotionally survive without connection. And I do believe that there is like a connection void or a spiritual void in most people that live in like North American society, or, you know, cultures that are driven. How do I say that? Right? Like modern society. I don't know what I'm saying, but you know what I mean. But
yeah, I kind of get what you mean. Like individualistic kind of.
Maybe it's capitalist society. Maybe
I don't know.
Types of cultures.
Yeah.
And I do believe there's a spiritual void. You could call it a spiritual void. You could call it a void of connection, a void of whatever you want. But then I've learned, I think it's important to value all the connections. So I've been on this kind of thing for many years, like, oh, I want these deep, meaningful connections. And I do, and I have them. I have a group of friends, like a small group of friends. We have deep connections, meaningful connections. Those are my people. Right. And my husband is my person, but we need to value all the other ones too.
Yeah.
And I think we talked about this, the podcast a while ago, but the Stutz documentary, the Phil Stutz documentary on Netflix. If you haven't watched it, everybody, it's so great. I think it's on Netflix. Phil Stutz is a therapist, and he's Jonah Hill's therapist, and they decide to do a documentary, and he has kind of these steps or these suggestions. And one of them is just talk to another human being, and it will pull you back into life and engage you. Right. Not every interaction with every human being has to be deep and meaningful or even be pleasant, it doesn't matter. You just need to connect to other human beings.
Right.
And it
Interesting.
pull you out of your mind and pull you into the outside world. And that can be very helpful when we're feeling depressed or anxious or isolated or all those things. Not every connection, for it to be helpful to us and worth it for us, for our mental and emotional, has to be a deep, meaningful connection. We just need to connect to other human beings.
Right.
And I don't remember what the article I read when I learned about social versus emotional connections, but I was like, oh yeah, I can just have friends that are light and fun, that they're my karaoke friends or they're
Right.
my whatever friends. And that's okay. It doesn't have to go further than that. They don't have to know the deep emotional stuff about me. They're my social friends, social connections. And so I think it's really helpful to name the types of connections, not label them, name them.
No, name them.
Right.
I also think, because I'm wondering, like, do you have any regrets about like treating us sorry, let me start from the beginning. It's clear to me that you have regret about mistaking a social connection for an emotional one and maybe leaning too much or like, expecting too much from someone. But have you ever regretted it the other way?
This goes back to my regret about relationship sourings. My is only so big.
Right.
Right. Like if I'm making a circle with my hands already, like my pie is only this big, and some people's pies are like big circles. And so sometimes when I'm like trying to make the deeper connections and what I thought was valuable, I actually don't see the people right in front of me saying, hey, I want to connect deeper with you. I want to have block it.
Yeah.
I think that's actually really common human behavior. Maybe I'm wrong. I've seen other people do it too, saying, hey, I'm right here and I want to be here for you, but I block that.
Right.
Right.
Because they're a social person and not an emotional person.
Yeah, perhaps.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like, again, there's no exact science to friendship. It's just, oh, I like this human, let me spend more time with them. But yeah, so that's tough. I think you've really hit on something here. That's gives us all a lot to think about. I'm now like, I'm replaying a lot of like all at once I'm replaying all these different like social interactions I've had in my head with people that I'm like, oh, that person isn't as close as I wanted. But then I also know there was people trying to get closer to me that I pushed away. So
yeah, you can be like, oh, well, why don't they like me?
Yeah.
Why don't they want to be friends with me in a deeper way? Or I thought we were right, but.
And to think I made someone else feel that way, which I'm sure I have, like pains me as well.
Nobody's perfect.
So, yeah, true. Like I'm even thinking of someone who used to be a very close friend of mine, continues to reach out, and it's just the timing never works, and I will say things around like, you have to give me more notice. Like I'm not someone who can just do things last minute anymore. And like when they reach out, I'm always upset that they haven't given me enough notice. And like, I don't know, maybe that's not fair because maybe they're trying, like, if we assume that everyone's trying their best, we can cause a lot less heartache for ourselves.
Wouldn't that be amazing if everyone in the world assumed that everyone was trying their best? What a different world we would live in, Shadoe.
Yeah, oh I know. But also, some people aren't trying their best. But I don't know what's someone's best. It's subjective to what they're going through.
Is different from your best is.
Yeah.
My brain works differently than your brain. My energy high is different from you, right?
Yeah.
So back to the social versus emotional, I think what you're trying to say too is something that was a deep emotional connection can evolve into just maybe a social connection, and then recognizing when that change happens and maybe lowering your expectations out of that friendship.
Yeah.
Not lowering your expectations, but just acknowledging the change in the relationship too.
Yeah. But then again, like both of you might not be on the same page. And like, how often do people actually have like this type of conversation where you're like, are we an emotional connection or a social connection?
No, but I think you can have the conversation with yourself and acknowledge it and like rename the relationship so that you're not setting yourself up, which is what I don't want to set myself up for. So I can set boundaries for myself around relationships if I can name them for myself. Yeah, I don't have to have that conversation with the other person, but I can say, oh, I've observed what's happened in this relationship. Based on my observations, I am going to set up some boundaries for myself, or I'm going to change the way that I approach this relationship based on what I've observed in it, in my behavior and the other person's behavior. So you can have that conversation with yourself.
Yeah, but I think, like, again, and talking about like how much better the world would be, wouldn't it be incredible if we could have those conversations with other people?
It'd be amazing.
And not have it clouded with all these emotions and things that are hard to deal with. I'm also, I get now my head's like jumping all over to like things like, you know, could we do something like Jerry Springer, but not so sensationalized? Well, especially because you know, he passed away yesterday, RIP. But you know, like you know, like instead of yelling like Jerry, like I guess, but that doesn't make good TV. Like people having wholesome conversations doesn't make good TV, unfortunately.
Well, hopefully it makes good podcasts.
Hopefully.
Doing here.
Amazing. I don't really have any other feedback. Do you have anything else you want to share about this?
No, thank you. Like, thanks for asking the questions. And yeah, I feel like it's a good step for me in like creating healthy boundaries for myself, boundaries, expectations, and knowing what my needs or wants are, and being able to be more like open-eyed in looking at what I do have in my life, what I do want in my life in terms of friendships, connections, those sorts of things. And how can I go into relationships, friendships, connections in a more open-minded way, or maybe it's not open-minded, actually, in a way where I just put myself first and like, this is what my expectation is, so that I don't set myself up for failure. I'm setting myself up for success.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's really cool.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting journey, an interesting skill. And it started here, everyone.
Excellent.
It started here with that, acknowledging it and letting go of punishing myself, that's how I've set myself up in relationships in the past and how I'm going to move forward.
Very
Over
cool.
2 different episodes it started here, but let's see how the experiment goes.
Yeah, definitely. I would love to hear maybe even like a third, like, you know, like next season, you're like, you know what? I have another update on this.
I'm sure there will be.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sure there will be.
Great.
Do you want to share yours?
Ew. Yeah, no, I do. I just wanted to say ew because, yeah.
Ew.
Ew, I don't want to. No, I do want to. I'm a baby sometimes.
Is this a big one for you? Is there a preamble for this?
Weirdly, it's so related to yours, but almost on the other side of it.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I'll share and you'll see where the similarities are.
Okay, go for it.
Okay, great. I have an experience I need to let go of in order to move forward. I regret believing that all women without children chose that lifestyle. This regret goes back to one specific moment. I had been having a really rough week at work and feeling overwhelmed in general. One of my coworkers was driving us to an event, and I was just ranting and letting out all of my feelings while they drove and didn't give much regard to how they might feel about that. The conversation, and by that I mean the one-sided rant that she patiently listened to, eventually got to the topic of children and the expectation that women should be mothers. I was extremely frustrated with being constantly asked about this. Any kind of future children, things like that. I was just getting, I was really overwhelmed by being asked that question all the time because I hadn't made up my mind yet. And I ended up saying something along the lines of like, and not everyone wants children. You don't have them and you're thriving, to my coworker. And after she let me continue my rant, she very patiently asked me if I was done. And then let me know when we were pretty close to the venue that although she doesn't have children, she didn't choose that. In that moment, I was so ashamed that I just made this assumption about her life. You know, it was just like I regretted it then and I still regret it today. Further consequences I'm missing out on due to holding on to this regret is that knowing I can make such a big mistake like that has become a barrier to making deeper connections with other women. I took up all the space in that car, and it was so unfair to her. And, in turn, I have started, or, I guess I stopped providing as much detail about my life when I'm having one-on-one conversations with people. And in turn, this kind of comes across as closed off to new people, but I'm simply really trying to avoid making such a big mistake again. Now, in that moment, I was using a tool that isn't a great one, but it was just ranting to whoever would listen. That is a tool I had at the time, and that's okay. And I mean, she could have told me to stop talking at any point during that car ride. That is who I was then, and I have grown in a lot of ways. I'm elated that I now keep my rants in my journal, or tell them to my therapist, or to people that really want to hear them. Something like your emotional connection that you brought up in yours. I still really appreciate that person and that she took the time to listen to me. And I do understand that I'm worthy of being heard. However, in one-on-one conversations, I will continue to be more mindful. I am relieved that I'm getting better at asking questions and waiting my turn.
Do you want feedback or do you just want to be heard?
I'd take feedback on this one.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot of regret there.
Yeah.
Like I can hear it in your voice.
Oh, like if I were to see her name on an email or a LinkedIn connection, I would just immediately crumble. I know I'd be like, oh my gosh, I feel so bad.
Is it like can we name any more emotions like embarrassment or like are you embarrassed?
Yeah, I guess regret still just really captures it. Like
Yeah.
this was a person I could have had an emotional connection with over a social connection had I nurtured it a bit better. But because I just like unleashed on her one day, and not about anything she did. She was just this really like patient, nice person who was driving us to an event. And I was just like, I'm so frustrated. And I just like talked and talked and talked and talked in the car. And, like it was really nice of her to not just be like, hey, shut up, I'm driving, or like, can you relax? Or like, she never cut me off. She literally let me just like blow off all this steam. Then I said this thing about her life, which again was a huge mistake on my part. And she just quietly corrected me and said, hey, like, not everyone who doesn't have kids chose that. And I had to go, whoa, you're right. Because I was so blinded by this like pressure I was feeling about having children that I was like I was like reaching for any woman I knew who didn't have children and was like using them as an example in my brain about like, look at all these people who don't have children, who aren't being pressured and aren't, like they don't need to anyway. So it's complicated. It's not just this emotional versus social connection thing. It's this like all the emotions wrapped up in the expectations of motherhood. And like for me, I have always felt a strong, like again, ew vibe about getting pregnant or having babies. And for some people, like they want that so much and they can't have it. And I didn't even consider that when I was just, naively ranting about all the pressure I was feeling
You
about
were
it.
assuming that everybody feels the same way you do.
Yeah. Who don't have kids anyway.
Yeah.
It was like, how did you escape? Like I remember even like not with her, but with someone else asking, like, how did you deal with the pressure of everyone asking you about kids? And that person didn't want kids. And like this was like way before that this conversation happened. And she's like, oh, you just wait it out. You just wait until, they stop asking, and they will stop asking once you hit a certain age, kind of thing. And, so from there, I just assumed, yeah, if you didn't have kids, like you chose that because like everyone in my head, everyone who wants kids has them. And even some who don't want kids end up having them. I didn't think about the other side of the coin on that at all.
So I have a couple questions, or maybe a flip too, is that it seems like there's a lot of regret with this. Let me tell you the flip first, then I'm going to ask you a question.
Okay.
But so what we've talked about this before, there's like a reason guilt as an emotion exists. Like it's okay to feel guilt because we can learn from it, but we should never feel shame, right? Shame is
Right.
shame is I'm a bad person versus guilt is I did a bad thing. We can learn from guilt and regret.
Right.
And it seems like you did. You did learn
Yeah.
from it. So you had this feeling of guilt immediately and it's still sitting there. So how can you flip it and say, I learned from this. I've never asked another woman or assumed another woman is on a similar journey with me or in their maternal journey. You clearly have learned from it. It made you realize, and we've talked about this before in season one of your regrets was taking up all the space.
Yeah.
Like talking too much, taking up all the space, taking up all the energy, taking up all the air in the room. This might be like a tipping point for you, this situation that you're talking about today, where you realized it probably has created good behavioral change in you and created for you from the guilt you're feeling. I need to see that there's different perspectives. So it's actually a really great learning opportunity for you. And I think you have already done the learning and it already has guided your actions, attitudes, and behaviors in many ways. It's shifted. So this is almost an example where feeling that guilt is a positive thing because it helped you be more open-minded overall in general in relationships with women. Now, I also hear what you're saying though, with at some point we have to let that guilt go and say, I learned from this. And it seems like you've been holding on to the guilt, and that's what we're here to talk about, right?
Yeah.
And that you've built up some walls and you're afraid of offending other women in your life.
Totally.
So my question is, what happened to your relationship with this woman after that incident?
I mean, we were always like social, civil coworkers, and I think that just continued. I don't think, I think it was always kind of maybe like known that I was someone who put my foot in my mouth all the time. Like I was really young at the time and definitely much younger than everyone else on that team. And I don't think, because of the type of person they are, like, I don't think they went and gossiped about like my big faux pas or whatever. I always felt like, I overcorrected, right? Not just with her, but like with everyone. I overcorrected because I was like, oh damn, like I gotta really rein in these rants. And I've gotten better at like not assuming things for other people. But at the same time, like if someone gives me the space to talk and talk and talk, I'm gonna do it. But I really try to keep it rooted in my own stuff and not just like assuming things about other people. So you're right, like I have learned that. Though I still do think there are times where I mistake either way, like I either mistake a social connection for an emotional one or vice versa.
So my question about like what happened with your relationship with this particular person, did she pull back or did you pull back? Or
I think it
now
was
that
just
you're
the
removed from
same.
it?
I'm like, even when I think about it, like, I think we only worked together for a couple more months after that. So like, it just kind of stayed the same. There wasn't really any, like, I would be surprised if they even think about this, honestly.
So
like they had a lot going on in their lives. I'm sure this was just like, oh, and then Shadoe talked my ear off in the car.
So it's possible you've been holding on to it's almost shame a little bit, right?
Yeah.
You've been holding on to the shame for so long. And the other person might not even remember it, or it wasn't like they haven't held on to it for as long as you have.
Right. I would hope not, because it was definitely very rude on my part. And it was so kind of them to just like, instead of just, giving me back that like energy, like I had a lot of erratic, nervous energy, and she definitely could have like just shoved that back in my face, but she took the chance to say, hey, you said something, I need to address it. This thing you're thinking isn't true, at least for me, and it was just like this really teachable moment where she taught me how to like correct someone with grace. So that was really cool as well. But yeah, like I don't think I would I'm also thinking about this bad habit I had back in office environments where I would just like show up at someone's cubicle and be like, do you want to hear my 5 minutes? I would just like talk, right? And you could tell like they were trying to email someone, or sometimes they were welcome for the distraction, but yeah, with this person, I think I think we both just kind of learned that I was not someone to be avoided. I'm not sure. I'm honestly not sure what she thought after that.
So are you hanging
Yeah.
on to this judgment of yourself? Are you the
Yeah.
same person you were then?
No, but it's interesting because like back then I had no idea about my ADHD, and now I can see that like ranting was just a part of my emotional dysregulation at the time. And I've gotten a lot better at like, dishing it out to the people who do want to hear it or do want to have that emotional connection with me. But yeah, I think although I'm not the same person as I was then, like I still find it really relaxing and soothing to talk and take up all the space. And it's like an actual tough thing for me to give space to others. So in that way, I don't think I've changed, because it is exhausting for me to still like keep my mouth shut.
I mean, you give me space every time you record.
Yeah, because we have a format to follow.
Oh,
And
interesting.
honestly, as soon as we end our call, I like bolt out of here and I'm like, Ben, I just tell him everything. And like I don't know, like it's such a good way for me to like now I'm just kind of getting in
Now
a
you're
spiral
rambling
here.
So
But yeah.
let me get you out of the spiral.
Yeah.
For a sec. So let's bring it back to the incident or the topic
Yes.
that you talked about.
Yes.
I think you have learned from it. I think that it actually is an important moment in your life. I think that maybe doing like a letting go ritual with it, or a letting go practice could be really helpful, because it seems like even though you've learned from it, you're also holding on to it and punishing yourself. And that's the part that you need to let go of. Is nobody's perfect. We all fuck up. We all do things. It's okay. Right? So nobody's judging you more than you're judging yourself. But it seems like this moment in life, this thing that happened, is really important for you. And that's the maybe perspective or mindset you need to go around it. Is, yep, I learned from that. It didn't feel good. I didn't feel good about it, and it didn't feel good. And what I've learned from that is I don't want to participate in behaviors that make me feel that way.
Yeah.
And you need to release the judgment, right? And letting go ritual could be writing it on a piece of paper and burning the piece of paper, or writing on a piece of toilet paper and flushing it down the toilet. Just giving and of course you can always come to my letting go class on Fridays if you want to do a meditation with me. I'm happy to have you come into the meditation. You only need to let go of one part of it.
Right.
Because I think everything else that you told me is actually really important, and has actually shaped you into the awesome person you are now. Like, has shaped you into someone being more self-aware, someone not taking up the space as much, someone aware when they are taking up space, someone who is aware of the people that you can take up the space with, because they love it when you take up the space.
Right.
I think you are an incredibly different person than the person you're describing from back then. And I think it's brave and courageous, and it takes a lot of work and deep work. And a lot of people in the world actually do not have the capacity, or haven't started the journey or exploration of self-awareness. And you are incredibly self-aware. And I think that's good. That's a good thing.
That's really helpful, because I'm even thinking about like, had this not happened with someone who was, patient and wonderful and kind enough to tell me like, hey, this was not cool, it could have gone a lot worse. Whenever
the judgment and punishment of yourself could be way worse right now. So in this moment right now, you're actually experiencing gratitude for that person. Did approach space, and it was actually an amazing learning experience for you that shaped who you are. And so hold on to that piece of it. but let go of the self-judgment piece of it.
That's really helpful, Victoria. Like that's, yeah. Cause like, I think it's so funny. Like I started this regret talking about how it was just about like the childlessness stuff. But that's not really the regret at all. The regret is really like that I hurt someone who, and I don't even know if I hurt them actually, because it's not like she said
You
she was hurt
assumed
by
that
it.
you hurt
I
them.
assumed I hurt them because they corrected my behavior.
Yeah.
Right. And they didn't have to do that either. They could have just festered and been mad at me, or they could have just let it go. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's so many decisions, or there's so many little moments that led to this decision for her to tell me, like, hey, no. And I can't imagine that that was easy for her, because she's not a super outgoing person like I am. And, you know, to take that time to help me is really cool that she did that. And you're right, I should try to shift it to gratitude for her rather than like flagellation for myself.
Yeah. Just shift the perspective on it, because the memory's still there.
Mm-hmm.
Those parts, and shift the perspective on it. And I think it's actually a really, I'm always thankful for everything you share, because I always find it very profound. We always
Mm-hmm.
end up having a profound, I think, aha, inspired moments with what we share. And I think that's a skill in itself, in and
Right.
of itself, right? Is to be able to reflect back on pivotal moments in our life. Maybe there's something we're cringing about or regretting about or feeling guilty about, but to be able to reflect back on it and see the different perspective, so that you can shape that memory in a different way. Because if that
Mm-hmm.
memory is hurting you or harming you, what parts of it can you let go? And what's the different perspective that you can retrain yourself, reprogram yourself to see from that?
Mm-hmm.
And you just did that.
Mm-hmm. In a messy way, but yes, you're right.
Everything's messy.
Yeah, that's true.
Everything's
Yeah.
messy, right?
Um,
So I think that,
yeah.
like, it's really helpful for our listeners what just happened
Mm-hmm.
here. It's helpful
Mm-hmm.
for me too. Because we do, right? We ruminate and we hold on to moments in our life, or pivotal memories in our life. And a, a lot of them are around guilt or shame or regret. That's why we have this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
But some of the deeper ones, and I think this one was a deep one today, right?
Yeah.
The deeper ones, having a safe discussion, which is what you and I are doing, participating in a letting go ritual around it, shifting perspective, actually be really helpful and can be really great in reprogramming. I think we talked about this. I think we talked about this a couple of sessions ago. The idea of like reprogramming. We've talked about toxic positivity and just covering things up with affirmations or good
Mm-hmm.
thoughts or whatever. But what just happened here is the piece that's missing in most, I believe, like coaching programs or work that we do on ourselves, if we're doing it with a coach or without a coach. Or that's why I'm so big on letting go. That's why the biggest program
Mm-hmm.
that I run is letting go. And I think, like, you revealed a belief here. This started out as like, I feel guilty about this, but really then
Yeah.
it turned into like, oh wait, it's space. Oh wait, it's right. Like,
Mm-hmm.
reveal, then you have to release, and then you can reprogram. Like, reveal, release,
Mm-hmm.
reprogram. It can actually be simply done. It can be as simple as this conversation we're having right here. Right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you just push it down and cover it up, those feelings of embarrassment and guilt and shame can always come back. Right? And
Absolutely.
if listeners, if you're going, what's a letting go ritual? Why does Victoria keep saying this? The brain loves tangible things, also loves visualizations, also loves using its imagination. This is how the brain programs itself. Think about dreaming. That's when we are taking our day and the brain is actually programming it into our brain, right? So think
Mm-hmm.
about how crazy your dreams are, or
Oh
you're
yeah.
analyzing something else. They don't make sense, right? So it's okay to use our imagination. So that's what I mean. These things are very effective. Like, if you wrote this out on a piece of toilet paper and then watch that piece of toilet paper flush down the toilet, It
Mhm.
sounds crazy. You're like, that's the weirdest thing ever, or whatever, right? You're having that kind of thought out there, listener. But the thing is the brain is enjoying that tangible experience. And it's like a kind of a creative way of releasing, or writing it down on a piece of paper and ripping it up, or
Mhm.
all the way to, and these are all techniques that have been proven, right? Like that this is how the brain works, all the way up to visualization work, guided meditation work that
Mhm.
actually isn't even the guided meditation. I'll give you an example, everybody. The most popular guided meditation for letting go is you imagine an object on the table, there's a cord attaching you to that object, and you cut it with a pair of scissors.
Mm.
And that right, that's like the same as kind of a dream. It's like, this represents me letting it go, and I'm visualizing this happening. And then I'm asking myself, how do I feel now that I've cut that cord? How does it feel?
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm.
So, but we can't get to the letting go if we don't reveal. And we can't get to the reprogramming, which is, affirmations or how we talk to ourselves.
Mhm.
The reprogramming will never work if we don't reveal and then release. And you just did that, Shadow. So my last question is, how do you feel?
I'm blown away at one very specific part of this. And did you ever see the movie Inside Out?
Oh my God, I love that movie. Yeah.
I know, I love it too. I'm thinking about the moment where happy and sad are like running through the core memories, and sad's like laying down and kind of touching all of them and like
Mhm.
turning some of the happy memories sad. And like, I'm sure we all have experiences with that. Like, you realize something you didn't realize about a person, and then like you're like, oh wow, I have this really happy memory, but oh my gosh, they must have really sacrificed. Or I have so many examples of turning a happy memory into a sad one, but I don't think I've ever once done it the other way around until today. Like I really don't think I have. I don't think I've ever looked at like a memory and went, oh wait, you can taint, it's not the right word anymore because it's a positive tainting. Is that a thing?
Yeah, it's a
I guess
shift.
influencing, it's a
Yeah.
shift, but yeah, I can't even really think of what the word would be right now. Infuse, like you infuse that memory with something like
You
more, not
colored it.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, so
Colored
it's
it with a
just,
different shade, different shading, different lighting,
mhm,
different, right?
yeah,
The brain loves this imagination stuff too, right? So
mhm.
put that in.
Yeah. Also, there's going to be an Inside Out sequel, and I'm really excited. Um, so that's how I feel about it.
Is there anything else you want to say about it?
No, I just, again, I understand that everyone's journey to motherhood or to childlessness is different. And my feelings about it are my own feelings. And if anyone wants to share their feelings with me about it, I'm happy to listen. Yeah, I definitely have some crunchy bits when it comes to thinking about, yes, of course, like the space thing we've talked about a lot, but specifically about motherhood stuff. I definitely have some crunchy bits about that.
Yeah, I do too. And I think
Mhm.
maybe that might be a whole other episode we
I
can
think
talk about
so.
it. The idea of, I'll just quickly say, I'm kind of in the middle. I haven't had a choice and
Mhm.
and I'm not sure if my body can. So, yeah, I think it could be a whole other episode. But
I
the
agree.
one thing I am going to say about it, because I think it needs to be said, is you can have maternal energy and not be a person that's given birth.
Absolutely. I
And
strongly agree with that.
or have my friend calls it my mom energy, because I actually have a lot of mom energy. And I
Nice.
want to give that mom energy. I love all my friends' kids. I love all my
Hmm.
nieces and nephews. I really do have a natural mom energy. Um,
Hmm.
and obviously, like with my cat, like I'm a cat mom too,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
and I think I'll leave it at that, and just acknowledging that I think in society we don't acknowledge mom energy in people that aren't moms,
Yeah, I
and
agree with that.
that they can have that energy, and maybe they can't have kids, but they have that
Right.
energy, and that mom energy should be valued just as much as if I had a child. But the energy that I do
Yeah.
give to children in my life and the maternal energy that I have is still
Hmm.
valuable, even though I'm not a mom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And I think like even moms that do have children are super undervalued. Like just taking care of others is such an undervalued skill in our society, which is so sad. And yeah, I think just yesterday, I don't even want to say her name because she's evil, but an evil politician from the United States
Okay.
literally yesterday posted a thing about how stepmoms aren't real moms. And it's like, can you just
Right. That's
stop
like a
being a
perfect
politician?
example.
I dislike this person very much. I'm sure once you figure out like the quote, you'll
Yeah,
figure
we're
out who
not
it
even gonna give
is.
her
But
airspace.
no, but like,
Yeah.
come on. Like, why? Just to be evil? Just to, anyway. Let's forget about her.
Let's use corporate talk here. Did you ever use this talk when you're in a meeting? Let's put that in the parking lot and we'll come back to
I still use the parking lot all the
the
time.
parking lot. Let's put it in the Let's Relieve parking lot because I think we
Yeah.
could have a really, I want to give it space and time to have the discussion about mom energy, maternal energy, and like how society values or doesn't value certain things around it. So let's put it in the parking lot and agree that we will do a whole other episode discussing that.
Love it. Okay, so then we come to our final bit of business on the Let's Relieve Regret podcast. Our wonderful leader, Victoria, is going to lead us into our 3 breaths of letting go.
All right, everybody, come on to the front edge of your chair or feel free to stand up. Most important is that your feet are grounded and flat on the floor. If you're driving, please don't do that. Just do the breaths with us and make sure you keep focused on driving as well. But if you're grounded and standing, you can place a hand on your heart if you want, or a hand on your belly to make sure you're breathing deeply. And just feel your feet on the floor. Acknowledge those points of contacts. Maybe it's your 5 toes and your heel. And know that that's the earth always holding on to you. Let your feet sink into those points of contact because that's gravity holding on to you. The earth will never let you fly away. You are always safe because the earth is always holding you in the palm of its hand. So before we take our 3 breaths, just take one big breath and let your feet sink into those points of contact so we can ground ourselves a little bit more. And push your feet into the floor. Let's start with our first breath. As you breathe in, I choose to release pressure and expectations and exhale with a big sigh. And on this next breath, as you inhale, I relieve my regrets. My past does not define me. And exhale. And on this last one, breathing in, I choose to be kind to myself moving forward. And exhale. Big, long exhale, emptying out all your breath. Thank you for listening, everyone. We appreciate you so much. Shadoe, I appreciate you so much. I appreciate you for being vulnerable and being open to my semi-coaching.
I love it. Thank you.
You got a little bit of what I do maybe in a coaching session for me.
Hey, I'm getting a discount over here, everyone.
And you always do it for me too. You have wonderful perspectives as well. So I appreciate you so much. So thank you so much, Shadoe.
Thank you, Victoria.
All right, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Okay, bye.